Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, hope you are doing well there and also having your activities enjoyable. Still in this pandemic COVID-19 situations, we have to restrict our activities directly, exclusively for teachings and learnings. Thus, in special occasions and in special agendas today, let me to share you knowledge dealing with the characteristics of English for specific purposes into my presentations. Today, this is a very special opportunity to me to explain a lot about the characteristic of English for specific purposes, or we can abbreviate it into ESP. But before we enter to the main point of the issues of characteristics of ESP, I'll tell you the introduction first about the ESP itself. So please take your attentions to my presentations. Well guys, I have divided my presentations into three sections. The first sections will be presented the brief definitions of ESP. In the sections, it will be also presented the history of ESP briefly and also the definitions of ESP from some experts. So you will understand and comprehend first what is ESP, what ESP means, and then of course the concept of ESP and what aspect belongs to in ESP. And then continue to the second sections of my presentations. It will presents the characteristic of ESP. This is the main point of my presentations. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, in characteristic of ESP, or ESP has characteristics such as the first is absolute characteristics and the second is variable characteristic. Of course, both characteristics is supported by some expert explanations or statements. And then continue the last sections of my presentations is about conclusions. In conclusions part, it will be presented the conclusions of my presentations, of course, and perhaps I'll tell you the summary or summarize the presentations of mine dealing with the characteristic of ESP. Now, let's take a look on the first part of my presentation. This is about the brief history of ESP. Guys, actually, from the early 1960s century, English for specific purposes or ESP has grown to become one of the prominent areas of English foreign language teaching today. In the past decade of 1960s, ESP becomes demand because English language becomes a demand for those people in certain areas because it used to communicate between people and one country to the another country. So the demand of English becomes the international language. So everyone have to master it, have to learn it. So this is the historical background why English becomes a demand and English for specific purposes. English not only used for educational purposes because in that situations English also used for people to communicate in certain areas. Take an example, there are an employment or there are technicians in that era. They are going to advertise or to announce that technology in that area, so that they need to use one language that everyone also use that language. So this is the demands of English used for international language, and then the choice or the options of that language used to communicate within people in the world. And then the development of ESP also reflected in the growth of number of the universities that offer or allowing an ESP course. By the growing or the increasing the development of ESP, then ESP entails to the universities. Some universities offer an ESP courses. Yeah. For example, the University of Birmingham and Aston University in United Kingdom also offer ESP courses. And of course, exactly in the number of ESP courses provided to overseas students who want to learn English in English-speaking countries. There are lots of number of overseas students who they are become want to learn English in the speaking English countries, that so that ESP courses is provided and shared from some universities. This is just a brief historical background of ESP, why ESP is establishment, why ESP is needed, and why and when, and also how ESP entered to the universities, and how ESP courses so that the growth or the development of ESP becomes smoothly and rapidly. Well, after we comprehend about the historical background of ESP, now we are having to discuss about the brief definition of ESP. Of course, the definitions of ESP is supported by some experts. First, I'm going to tell you is about to the Galina 2016 statement according to ESPs, or dealing with the ESP definitions. Yeah. According to Galina said that English for specific purposes, or ESP, refers to teaching and learning English as a second or foreign language. Yeah, it means that this statement says that English is a foreign language, becomes a foreign language for people who use English as their foreign language, or people who use English as their second language. Well, the goal of the learners is to practice English in a particular academic, professional, or occupational area. So it means that the use of English for people who use English as their foreign language or their second language, but it used for them, or the benefits of their learning English itself, is to communicate. The communications, use of communications for people that is for in the certain or particular areas, such as for academic purposes, for professional purposes, or they use English for occupational purposes. The simple example is about the let me give you the illustrations. When you are as the waiters, yeah, you become the waiters in the one of the American restaurant, so you need to master and you need to learn English. So this is the kind of the benefits of the advantage or the use of English to communications in occupational areas. So by the statement of Galina's statement according to definitions of ESP, that's true. Yeah, that's true that English for specific purposes over course that used to discipline to the certain discipline areas regarding to learners reasons or motivations to learning English. Okay. The second definitions about this ESP is coming from Hutchinson and Waters 1987. I believe that everyone who master in ESP, or whoever learn about the ESP, they have familiar with Hutchinson and Waters. According to them, they have defined ESP as an approach rather than a product. So they assumed that ESP is becomes an approach, because this is a kind of way we as a teachers or we as educators, yeah, want to offer a courses, English courses, but using considering to the learner's needs. So this is a kind how we can make the approach to know the student's need. Yeah, and then meaning that ESP necessarily involve any particular kind of language, teaching material, or methodology. By using this approach, yeah, as a teacher, we we are obliged to understand, and we are obliged to find teaching material. We are obliged to find methodology and also the kind of way to teach English as foreign language or English as second language. And then the fundamental function of ESP, according to Hutchinson and Water, said that why does these learners need to learn a foreign language? So this is true, absolutely true, that in ESP courses it aims to know the students' motivations, or to know the students' encouragement, why they are obliged, or why they want to learn English as foreign language or English as second language. Now, by means of the expert definitions dealing with the ESP, it can be concluded, or it can be said, that ESP is a field of English language teaching, right? ESP is a field of English language teaching, or ELT, which focuses to develop communicative skill in specific discipline, such as English for academic purposes, English for occupational purposes, English for business purposes, English for professional purposes like doctor, like lawyer, and onwards. And then English for vocational purposes such as tourism, aviation, etc. So that's absolutely true, that ESP is one field or the branch of English language teaching. And then this course is a very specific. This different to the general English, because ESP used to find or to produce the communicative skills of learners in certain areas. Yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I agree with Hutchinson's statement. According to his statement is, in theory nothing, in practice a great deal. Why Hutchinson said that? It began because Hutchinson tried to clarify the differences or the diversity between English for specific purposes and English for general purposes, because to the fact that sometimes people are debating to these distinctions dealing with ESP and also English for general purposes. But Hutchinson answered that if you want to know the diversity between them, this is about not only about the theory, but this is how you to practice, how you to know it by practice. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as a teachers, and it is ESP teachers, English for specific teachers, they must consider when they are going to offer ESP courses, or they want to teach on the ESP courses, they have to consider, because the teachers in ESP or ESP teachers has so many rules. Why I said that? Because they, as a teacher, they do not only, or they are not only have to teach in a classroom, but they are obliged to be a designer, because they have to design a syllabus, they have to design material, teaching material. So in ESP courses, the role of teachers have so many rules. They are becoming a designer, and then they are obliged, or they are prepared to be collaborator, they are prepared to be researcher. Why researcher? Because in fact ESP teacher have to find students or learner needs, because in the aims of ESP course itself is to find, or to find the learner's needs, because in ESP course over the discipline or specific English courses to the specific field. So the teachers also are prepared to be a collaborator, to be designer, and then to be Also, of course, they are also obliged to be to be evaluator, because they also need to continue to the main issues of my presentations is dealing with the characteristic of ESP. But the question is why we need to comprehend this issue. Yeah, the answer is when you are a trained English teachers, you have to know, you have to understand, or you have to. Okay, no. We are entering the main point, or the important issues of my presentations is dealing with the characteristic of ESP. Why we are considered to know about this point is because, well, continue to the main issues of my presentations is dealing with the characteristic of ESP. Why it becomes necessary to understand and to comprehend the characteristic of ESP, because the fact is, when you are the ESP courses teachers, you have to consider some characteristic of ESP courses, because ESP is different to the general purposes. So the answer to the question, what difference between ESP and also English for General Purposes or EGP, the answer is when you are comprehend to the characteristic of ESP. The characteristic of ESP will help you to understand about the diversity between to the ESP and EGP. Now, let me try to explain and describe a lot and detail about the characteristic of ESP. First, the characteristic of ESP is about the absolute characteristic. The absolute characteristics were supported by Doodle, Evans, and Jones 1998. There are the number of absolute characteristics as follows. The first, ESP is defined to meet specific needs of the learners. Why? In these ESP courses, ESP is designed to meet specific needs of the learners. As a teachers of ESP courses, they are obliged to become a researcher. They have to find what the motivations, what the encouragement of learners, why they want or when they have to learn English. So this is about to gaining or to finding the learner's needs, because the ESP courses is designed to meet specific needs of the learners. The aims of ESP course itself is to define, is to find, to meet that this is appropriate. The courses, the English courses is appropriate to the learner's needs. Take an example. When your learners is aims to or motivate to learn because they want to enter to become an employment in some or in certain office. So make sure that you understand his or her needs. Take an example. They want to become a secretary. So you have to understand that the communicative skills that needs by your learners is related or dealing with the English that used in communicatively to use in their or in his or her employment. Absolutely. The second absolute characteristic is about ESP makes use of underlying methodology and activities of the discipline itself. Of course, make sure when you are English teachers in ESP courses, you have to consider to find the appropriate or the suitable methodologies used to you for teaching your ESP learners or ESP students. You have to try to find the way, the best way, the appropriate way to teach students according to their needs or according to their reasons to learning. So make sure that your what's your design, or maybe because in this stage you have to become, or you are obliged to be a designer. You need to arrange, you need to create a syllabus, you need to arrange the teaching material. So make sure that your teaching material, teaching methodology, and your approach is appropriate to your students. So in ESP courses, makes use of underlying methodology and activities. So you need to elaborate the activities to your ESP courses regarding to your students' motivations to learning. The third characteristic of ESP is about ESP is centered on language. Yeah, ESP is centered on a grammar, on a lexis, on a registers, and also skills, discourse, and genre appropriate to these activities. So, if you have comprehend your students or your teachings and learning activities, then you also have to consider about the use of your material or your teaching materials. You need to find the appropriate grammar, the appropriate lexis and register that use for communicative skill for your students. And then sometimes in ESP courses is focus or concerns on the certain or focusing on specific skills. When you teach in your ESP courses, make sure that your teaching is appropriate to grow or to develop your students in certain skills. So what students need, what students to enhance, what skill that student wants to enhance, that in ESP courses is very essential and pivotal. And also the discourse and the genre also should be appropriate to the activities of your teachings and learning. You have to consider all of the things, so that your teaching material that you have arranged and you have established is useful for your students in ESP courses. Then the fourth characteristic of ESP, an absolute characteristic, is an ESP program course or course of ESP concerned to teaching a language that concern or focus on a grammar, lexis, register, skill, discourse, and genre that suit to the activity. This absolute characteristic, or the first absolute characteristic, is closely similar to the previous characteristic, because ESP also centers on the language that use on the suitable activities that suitable for the teacher's reasons to learnings, and then also the ESP programs offers to concern to teachings a language that focus on the grammar, on the lexis, on the register, on the skills, and the discourse that's suitable to these activities. Let's take the example. When you are teaching the students that they are proposed to occupational purposes, and then the second one is for professional purposes. And the students that aim to learn English in ESP courses to professional purposes as a doctor, you as a teacher, you have to consider and you have to comprehend, to understand about what language needs, English as the language needs to the students. So you have to consider about the activities when you are designing the teaching materials, and then you are approaching and then you are teaching students. So you have to conscious and or to focus on the language used to your students by their aims to the professional as a doctor. So your grammar, your lexis, your register, the skills, and then the discourse should be appropriate to your students as doctor, as professional purposes. Once again, it's differ when you want to go to teachings the students for occupational purposes. Take an example. Your students becomes waiters, American waiters of American restaurants. So you have to consider the grammar, the language use, and the skills that your students want to enhance. And then of course also the lexis and then the registers should be appropriate to the activities of your teachings and learning. So this is different when you design the materials for your students. For the aims is to professional purposes and then for occupational purposes. So this is time to you as a teacher to develop your knowledge regarding to what the students or your ESP students needs, and of course to develop their language skills according to the professionals skill enhancement. Well, now continue to the variable characteristics of ESP. But before I enter to explain the variable characteristics and the types of variable characteristic from some experts, let me to give you the explanations or the brief explanations related to the diversity between the previous characteristic, that's absolute characteristics and variable characteristic. I have searched from some sources related to the definitions of absolute and variable. It can be concluded that in the absolute characteristics, the word absolute now refers to the something that's the most prominent use or the most prominence that should be available on that something. So, or in Bahasa Indonesia, the absolute means that something mutlak. So, absolute refers to the something that should be available on something. While or whereas the words variable refers to something that's subjects into the variations or the subject that can be in the variety. So the characteristics of variable characteristics that refers to the something that variations of the characteristic of ESP. Here now the variable characteristic is supported by reference 1998. ESP may be, but not necessarily as follows. The first is restricted as to the language skills to be learned. Yeah, according to Stevens 1998, he says that in the variable characteristic of ESP, the first is ESP focus on the language skills by the learner's needs. So when we find the students need to develop their skills in reading skills, we just focus on the developing the language skills on reading only. So this is the restricted to focus on the language use in the teachings and learning and in ESP courses. So this is also the variable characteristic of ESP. This is the options of the teachers and what the students' motivations and or the reason to learning. And then the second, ESP may be but not necessary to not solve according to any pre-orders and methodology. Why it becomes not solved according to any pre-orders and methodology, it becomes that the use of ESP courses of course do not only solve to according to any pre-ordinary and methodology, but it's the options of the teachers that the teachers want to consider related to the students' need, and the students want to learn for boosting their language skills, exclusively English as their foreign language or English their second language, to master them. Yep. Still remain to the variable characteristic. Then now I'm going to tell you about the variable characteristic that's supported by Dudley, Evans and John 1998. Yeah, according to them, the variable characteristics as follows. The first is ESP may be related to or designed for specific disciplines. Yeah, ESP is used to design. ESP courses is designed for specific discipline, as I have told you in the previous presentations of my speaking, as that ESP courses offers offer the specific disciplines in certain fields, such as when you are considering to your students to the motivation to learning for occupational purposes. So you used the teaching material, and then you use to design. You as the teachers, you design the teaching material. You approach your teaching to produce or to establish the ESP course to the students' needs on their specific disciplines or their specific learning reasons for learning. So this is true that ESP related to the designs for specific disciplines. This is the challenge to the teachers to design appropriate teachings and learning atmosphere related to specific disciplines of the students' learning and motivations to learning. And the second, ESP may use in specific teaching situations a different methodology from that of general level English. In a general level English, as the teacher, they just teach the students according to the curriculum and according to the syllabus and curriculum related to some aspects of language skills, such as reading, listening, speaking, and also writing. All those skills are tough by teachers in the general of English, but in ESP courses, teachers need to consider the specific language skills that needs for the students to boosting their language skills, of course. And then the situations, of course, is different to the general English, because the aims of the ESP itself is to help the students to meet their specific needs. So the teaching situations and the teaching approach should be appropriate to the students. If you want to make the or take one thing, or to design as a teacher, to design the teaching materials, as I have said in the previous explanation, also you need to consider the teaching situation that boost your students to the communicative skill, if the needs of them is to communicate. So you have to encourage your students to the situations that they need to they are obliged to speak up, they are obliged to communicate with peers, with the teachers also. And then the different methodology is useful, is different to the general English, because this is the challenge for ESP teachers to encourage and support your students to be more soft skill, to be more soft skill use, and then they perhaps they will meet what they need on the ESP courses. So the situations and also the atmosphere in the classroom also should be some practices and then some exercise that can enhance students to develop their professional skills, to their ability in language skills according to or appropriate with their aims or the motivations in learning English as their foreign language or their second language. The third variable characteristic is ESP refers to be designed for adult learners. Commonly ESP course is offered to adult learner, because adult learners has a English background. They have a good background of English, so that they will enter the ESP courses easily than the young learners. For instance, the ESP courses is offered for adult learners because they are more easily than young learners. Either at the tertiary level institutions, sometimes we find ESP courses at the tertiary level, or the university students, they usually grab the ESP courses in their learning in institutions or in the universities, especially or chiefly when you are teachers trainings, or you are teachers English teachers department. You sometimes often allowing often allow the ESP courses, because this is the one of things that can give your background knowledge of English, and then you are able to prepare yourself to design and to make an options that after you graduate at the institution, you will be ready to be teachers in some situations. Maybe you are going to work in ESP courses, in ESP institutions, or I mean in ESP courses over, you will be prepared to, because to the fact that you have understand about and you have comprehend about the ESP. This is about the students or the university students learning in that university. And sometimes also the ESP courses also over in the for learners at secondary school level, because sometimes ESP is over also in the vocational school, for example, because to the fact that in the vocational school sometimes teachers also have their own curriculum that different to the state university, because sometimes the students in the vocational school, they must be prepared to have a communicative skills in, because they also use the different tools in vocational school, because they are more practice, more doing exercise with so many tools, with so many equipment, so that they have to understand about that. So it leads them to over ESP courses. So this is about the target or the subject. The subject of ESP courses refers to the adult learners, the advanced learner and intermediate learners, even they are university students, even they are secondary students in the level of vocational school or in the level of etc. Fourth variable characteristics is closely related to the previous variable characteristic, that say ESP is generally designed for intermediate or advanced students. Yes, commonly ESP is suitable to teach for students who they are in the level of advanced and intermediate students, because they have the background, the good or the well background of English. They have in their early or in the previous level of learning, they have grabbed and they have achieved the knowledge of English, so that they will be easily to join the ESP courses, to join the ESP class. So the students and the teachers can adapt and can readjust the teachings and learning ESP course easily. And the last variable characteristic is about most of ESP courses assume some basic knowledge of the language system, but it can be used with beginners. Why it becomes that is because sometimes in the ESP courses, we as a teacher also have to introduce the English background with the new or the specific discipline, because sometimes the students or the learners of ESP courses, they have they probably have the background of English, but the background of English is general, right? So in ESP courses, we have also applied to introduce them the basic knowledge of the specific discipline that the students want to learn. So this is kind of the variable characteristic of ESP. Even we have find the students' need, and we have find the background of students' English background. So this is the time for the teachers also to consider the students' English background, and then they have to give the basic knowledge first to the students, of course, according to the specific needs of the students. Take an example: when your ESP students want to enhance or want to master about the specific needs, become a doctor or become a lawyer. So you have to introduce first the basic knowledge of English that used to communicate between the doctors and then the lawyers. When the doctors, they are obliged to master about the vocabulary used, the vocabulary used and grammar used on from or for the doctors, because doctors sometimes find everything. So what things that ever and that very most often commonly doctor use in their works and in their activities, this is the basic knowledge of the students need to readjust and to readjust their background of English and then the use of English in the ESP courses. So this is very pivotal and essential to the teachers to understand the history, the background of your students of English, and then the designing material about the basic knowledge of the language system of in the specific needs to enhance and to boosting your students' communicative skills. For example, when they are actually wants to develop their communicative skill in their disciplines purposes. Well, that's all about the characteristics of ESP, both absolute characteristics and variable characteristics from some experts. Yeah, by that definitions that's supported by Dudley Evans, their over is clearly influenced by that of Trevans, although he has improved it substantially by removing the absolute characteristic that ESP is in contrast with the general English. So by means of the definition explanations about the absolute and variable characteristic, it helps to our comprehensions and understanding related to the definition, related to the diversity between the ESP and EGP, English for specific purposes and English for general purposes. ESP has the characteristic that make it different to the English for general purposes, because in ESP itself you have I have delivered all about the characteristic of ESP, that the important and the essential things that to the characteristic of ESP is because the ESP course offers to give to meet the special needs of the learners, so the learners can develop their language skills in their appropriate to their motivations or their reasons to learning. And then the general of English, sometimes the teachers in general English are not aware to find the specific needs of the learners, but in ESP the teachers have to consider to establish or to make the teachings and learning becomes to meet the students' specific needs. But in general English, sometimes teachers are not aware to find the specific needs of the students. Take an example, when you are as the ESP teachers, you have to you must be understand about what students skills to enhance in ESP courses, in your teachings and learning in ESP courses. But when you are in general English, you just teach the English for learning English learning skill, language skills such as reading, writing, and then speaking, and then listening. But in the ESP courses, you only focus on one language skill for the students' reasons to learning. For example, when your students want to enhance the reading skills or the speaking skill in the communicative ones, you have to arrange and also create the teaching material, designing the syllabus appropriate to your students' motivations and reason to learning. This is the characteristic of ESP is help to clarify the diversity of ESP and in EGP, English for general purposes. Continue to the last sections of my presentations is the conclusions. Let me to summarize my presentations from the historical background of ESP, definitions of ESP, and then the characteristic of ESP. The divisions of ESP into absolute and variable characteristics in particular absolutely is very helpful in resolving the arguments about what is ESP and is not ESP. I mean that what is which one is ESP courses and which one is EGP, English for General Purposes. From the definitions, we can see that ESP is not necessarily concerned with a specific discipline, nor does it have to be aimed at a certain age group or ability range. So in the ESP courses, the target or the subject of the learners is coming from from intermediate and advanced level students, and they are the adult learner. Commonly in the ESP courses, the learners are from the adult learner that who has a background of English at their previous level or the previous stage of learning language. ESP should be seen simple as an approach to teaching because according to the expert Hutchinson and Waters, they said that ESP is approach. ESP is approach. So this approach is appropriate to use for achieving the students' needs or the student motivations and learning to learning. So that ESP is an approach to language teaching in which the decisions as the content and methods are based on the learner's reasons for learning. So the main point or the pivotal point in this on my presentation is about to understand and to comprehend the ESP characteristics. So we can differ ESP into the English for General Purposes. If we agree with its definition, so we begin to see how broad ESP really is. What is difference between DESP and general English approach. So we as a teachers in the future, we are considered and we are obliged to aware what the courses or what the teachings and learning that we have to conduct. We have to conduct it. We are going to conduct. So when we are offering ESP courses, so we need to understand the techniques or the mechanism of the ESP courses offers. We have to find the students' need. We have to find the reasons of learners' need. But sometimes in a general English, we do not find the teachers to find, and they are obliged to find the students' or learners' need. So the pivotal issues is about the characteristic of ESP is to find the specific needs of the learner in the discipline or the particular disciplines areas. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all about my explanations dealing with the characteristic of ESP. Hope it will make you understanding and attend to what ESP, and then of course to make sure that you have comprehend about the characteristic of ESP. Then it will help you to develop your skills to when you are going to over ESP courses, and then you are teaching in the general English, so you must be understand about the concept of ESP, and then you also have to differ that ESP is the variety or is the field of English language teaching which focuses on developing the specific needs in the particular and in the disciplined particular discipline areas of what the students reasons to learning or their motivations to learning. So make sure that you have understand about the concept, you have to understand about this. Thank you very much guys to your attention to my presentations. I really appreciate all of you, and then please feel free to give a feedback, suggestions or comments to my presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nice to meet you guys.